So I've been doing this rabbi gig for about 30 years, which is hard to get my head around, that number. And doing this high holiday thing as well. And I had this experience on Rosh Hashanah, particularly Erev Rosh Hashanah, that it happens day of, usually on my trip to come to synagogue for the evening service. As I have my early dinner so I can digest before I start and lead a service, and I'm going usually in rush hour traffic and something, and the world just going about doing its thing. And it always bugs me a little bit, because I feel like, well, wait a minute. Well, maybe a little selfishly. I'm like, well, wait, I'm all gussied up, I'm all serious, I'm nervous, I'm not eating. It's time to, what's everyone just not thinking about this? And maybe it's a little selfish too, because I wonder, well, how many of my fellow Jews will be out doing that as well, not just treating it as a normal Wednesday night? Because what rabbi doesn't like having more people in the pews, right? But it's really not that. I mean, yeah, of course, we all love that, but that's not it, really. What it is that it's not really me, per se, and how that choice impacts me. It's that sense, that profound feeling that there's something big happening. I really believe that. There's something big, profound, that we are being charged and called and summoned to give notice to. And people are missing out. People are missing out on this thing, this Rosh Hashanah. And we all need it. I didn't have to reference it as many times as I have, but you know, wow, what a year. What a year it's been. Who doesn't need some call, some summons to stop the world and get off for this break, for this opportunity? Because what I fully and wholeheartedly believe is there's something cosmic. There's something so deeply and desperately important that we need to hear and respond to. Maybe that's why I blow a shofar. It literally calls and summons us. That's what it was for. It calls us to this day. We hear, well, there's 3 calls we hear throughout these days. We hear, Teruah. Teruah literally means blast. It literally means shout. That note, that call is a shout, a blast to us. Actually, one of the names for this day is Yom Teruah. The day of the call, the day of the blast, because it's supposed to unsettle us, wake us up. One of our greatest sages and scholars, Moses Maimonides, the Rambam, said exactly this about this day. It's as if our souls are slumbering all the time, and the shofar is there to wake us up. Now, I know what happens with the shofar. It happens to me too. We treat the shofar call as something that's supposed to, that it's fun and it's cute. Oh, look how long Yuri blows the shofar. Isn't that great? We applaud at the end of the big one. We bring the kids and we sit, and it feels great. It's cute. It's different. And I appreciate that too. But that's not all of it. The shofar is supposed to be this soul reverberating blast that wakes us up, that helps us be here. We started our service, our prayer saying, Hineni, I am here. Fully present, and eyes, ears, heart, mind open. There's a story about a European town, a shtetl, whose rabbi had this peculiar custom about the shofar. Now, it's not just Rosh Hashanah that the shofar is blown. It's for the whole month of Elul. And usually it's done at the morning service, and people gather, and they do the thing, and they go on and do their day. But this rabbi, he was a little off. And so what he would do is that at midnight of each night of Elul, he would climb the tallest hill in the town, and he would take the biggest shofar he had, and he would blow it at midnight, waking everyone up in their little shtetl. At night, they thought, oh, the rabbi's being himself, we'll let him go. But after the second or third night, some of the leaders of the community said, Rabbi, maybe we could do this in the morning? He said, no, that's the idea. The shofar is supposed to unsettle you, disrupt you. It's not supposed to be in the morning and just go to your work. And they said, oh, okay, thanks, Rabbi. And they knew they were in for a month of midnight shofar blowing. So every night at midnight, he would trudge up that hill, pull out the shofar, and blast away. And so it started to happen that the people throughout the month, instead of trying to go to sleep and waking up or sleeping through it or doing what they could not to hear it, they kind of laid awake waiting. And they were tired and groggy and cranky, but they were unsettled. And then laying awake in the wee hours of the night, in that quiet, in that vulnerability, maybe thought or paid attention to things that they didn't normally. And by the time Rosh Hashanah came, after a month of that, when the full breath of the shofar, all 100 traditional calls came, those shofarot, well, they had been prepped and ready, and it broke open their hearts. And they experienced a 10 days like they'd never before. Because they were alive, they were awake, they were uncomfortable, they were attentive in a way that they had not been before. This day says to us, Teruah. Wake up. Pay attention. But now we're awake, what do we pay attention to? The shofar speaks to us next. It says, Tekiah. That note, it's full, it's long, it's clear, it's stable. That's what we are called. Actually, in the Torah, this day is called Zicharon Teruah. You shall call a day of remembrance. Rosh Hashanah is a day of remembrance, and what are we supposed to remember? We are supposed to remember the true, full wholeness, the stability, the clarity of all the world, even in the midst of seeing our world and experience its brokenness and its fear and its frustration. We are called to see and remember the bigger piece. The legend is that with those 100 calls that we make on Rosh Hashanah traditionally, that literally a bridge is created between the earth and the heavens. The gates, you've heard that metaphor, are open. And we remember, oh, there's more than this. Maybe the hell heavens thing doesn't work for you. Let me try a way that the mystics describe it. They say that our reality is two pieces. It's yesh and ayin. Our world is yesh. Yesh in Hebrew means that is. The thingness, the stuffness of reality. And it could be concrete things or abstract things, but that's this world. This world that we live in and we experience and we do things in and things are done to us, that is the yesh. But the mystics say there's also the ayin. the no-thingness, the nothingness, that is as real and as full and maybe more and beyond. And both are reality. We live so much in the world of yesh that we forget there's more. We are so attuned to just this world and its corporeality that we forget that there's more. And when we see that, we remember that, it changes our perspective profoundly and dramatically. You ever hear of the overview effect? I never heard about it, but I came across it. It's an experience described that happens to astronauts. When they are in space, and the first time that they see the Earth from far away, the Earth as part of this bigger backdrop of cosmos, their home, our home, it profoundly changes them and shifts them. They've done studies on this. After seeing this and experiences, astronauts come back and they change their lives. They're still astronauts, but they do more works of loving kindness, of tzedakah. They may not call it tzedakah, but that's what they do. There's something about seeing the world and its connectedness to the bigger piece, the larger more of the cosmos, that changes them profoundly. The sixth man, whoever went to the moon, Edgar Mitchell, he described it like this. There was a startling recognition that the nature of the universe was not as I had been taught. I not only saw the connectedness, I felt it. He saw it with his eyes. I'd say he saw it with his heart. He remembered maybe what we all have long ago forgot, that we are part of something so much larger than ourselves. And no matter how this earth, how this yesh feels, no matter how awesome it can be, and the great things we get to do, no matter how much it kicks us in the behind and turns us inside out and makes us feel afraid and scared and broken, there is still more. And we remember and see that more, we can't help but to change. The Tekiah calls us to remember this wholeness, this clarity. The third call of the shofar that summons us after we've woken up and paying attention, after we remember what we've forgotten, is Shavarim. And that call, Shavarim, means broken. Maybe you could hear it a bit. It's broken up, it's shattered. That's that call of the shofar and what it calls us to give notice to, attention to. But for me, it does so in the context of another way we name this day. This day is called Hayom Harat Olam, the day that the world was born. This is the world birthday. This is the day the world was created. On this day, we are summoned not just to pay attention or relive that brokenness that is part of being human beings, but to marinate ourselves in the dynamic and the power of creation. That's not just around us, that's within us. We are summoned, we are called to remember that no matter what the world throws and presents to us collectively or personally, we are still wired to respond with life, with movement, with progress, with growth. I think that's why I was inspired to share Reb Nachman's teaching. That if we believe that we or the world can break, we have to believe and remember that we can fix, we can repair, we can grow, we can make new. Reb Nachman, he was kind of a broken guy himself. By our definitions and thinking about things, Reb Nachman suffered from depression, anxiety, debilitating self-doubt. No doubt, not things that he was diagnosed with back in the 18th century. But nonetheless, this was his real worldview, and this is how he saw himself and in the world. And yet, he brought us this. I can imagine that this time of year was so difficult for him. Whatever his role within the community, but personally. Because, hey, what do we do in Yom Kippur? We list all our sins. We say all the ways we messed up, and that's hard. That's heavy. That's dark work. If you dive deep into our liturgy, or not so deep, it's heavy-handed. You don't come in here lighthearted. It kind of beats you up a little bit. So you can imagine Reb Nachman coming in and feeling the way he does about himself and just embraced and surrounded by this darkness. And yet, Reb Nachman taught that when you look deep inside and see and feel enveloped by the darkness, what we need to do, what we can do because it's within us, is just start to find just that small pin, that circle of light. Just find one, and then the other, and then another. And even if they're small and tiny, they are there, and you take them together and put them together as if notes on a music staff. And you create and you write and you sing a melody in that darkness, a song of light, of hope, of life. Because we are inherently built with this. No matter how heavy the darkness, we are built with light within us, and we are built to find it. So we hear that call of Shivarim. It reminds us of both the brokenness, but today is Hayom Harat Olam, the day of creation, of rebirth and renewal. Shivarim. You may say, wait, there's one more call, isn't there? There is. Tekiah Gedola. The big tekiah, literally. The big one, the last one, we embrace that one. It's long and big and strong because perhaps we've woken up. Perhaps we've remembered. And perhaps we've begun to lean into that power of birth, of renewal, of creation. There's a story in our tradition of the Tekiah Gedolah. In the book of Joshua, their first conquest in the Promised Land is the city of Jericho. It is the place that stands between them and going to the Promised Land. And it is fortified by the strongest, best walls of the era. And what's their strategy? What's their plan of attack? They surround the city of Jericho, all with shofarot in their hands, and then they walk around it 7 times, and then they blow a Tekiah Gedolah. And as the story goes, the walls fall down, and they can begin to enter the Promised Land. Now let's not get too stuck on the literal part of that and the land and who it belongs to, and we can have that conversation another day. Let's take this story in the realm of myth and metaphor. There are walls stopping each of us from moving from our wilderness to the Promised Land. This day calls us, summons us, imbues us with the power to knock those walls down. When we hear the Tekiah Gedolah, it wraps up all those other calls that tell us to wake up. Be here, be present. That summons us to remember the more, the wonder, the possibility of this reality. That challenges us and reminds us, too, of our capacity to sit in any darkness and not only have the light, but create something with it. The Tekiah Gedolah calls us and summons us into each and every new year. As we hear its call tonight, I challenge you to truly hear its summons. Year is going to blow it long and hard and beautifully, and we're all going to want to cheer. Maybe some of you are going to time it, and that's okay. But on another layer, listen here, listen here, listen with all of yourselves, and hear that bold, beautiful summons to walk the threshold to what we need to face and the walls we each need to knock down in 5785. Tekiah Gedolah.